Hello, everyone. Today's topic is literary craft. How does that have anything to do with writing? And what do we do in Brave Writer to support that? So who am I? I am Julie Bogart from Brave Writer. Brave Writer is my 21-year-old entrepreneurial effort that has turned into a full-blown company. We produce writing products and online classes and a membership community that supports home educators in particular, but also any parents interested in participating in the education of their children. So what we're going to look at today is the third in a four-part series. So if you are just coming for the first time to this webinar, there are two previous webinars I've done in June that are about spelling, punctuation, grammar, and why we use living literature to teach the mechanics of writing. Those replays are available on the blog, and my staff members will give you a direct link to that blog entry so that if you enjoy this webinar and you want to catch up with the other two, you can go ahead and do that. The final webinar of this four-part series is next Tuesday, a week from today, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, and what does that mean? 10 a.m. Pacific. I will be coming to you from California at that point, but I will be here at the same time. And that will be a Q&A to answer any lingering questions about the dart, the arrow, the boomerang, or the slingshot, are programs that teach you the mechanics of writing, literary craft, and offer you a great series of novels to read aloud or read with your kids. Those programs have huge numbers of details attached to them, and you can read about that by going to bravewriter.com/special-offer. So bravewriter.com/special-offer, because in the month of June only, if you purchase Dart, Arrow, Boomerang, or the College Prep Bundle for the Slingshot, you will automatically be added to the Brave Learner Home, our membership community, where we do ongoing training and support for your use of our products all year long. So I just want to get that in at the top of the hour so that those of you who have to leave early actually know about the special. And now let's get started with today's topic. So first of all, some of you may or may not know, but Peter Elbow is the guru of writing in my life. He was a well-known writing composition theorist in the 1980s in particular, and the 90s into the 2000s, when he wrote what he calls his, magnum opus of writing. This is called vernacular eloquence. And one of the gifts that Peter has brought to us into the world of writing is this, that writing is not primarily a visual language. But because we have prioritized reading as the gateway to writing, as though writing cannot occur until you are a fluent reader and speller, we have sort of silenced the writing voices of our students, of our children, of ourselves. We worry that if we cannot visually represent the thoughts in our heads accurately, we will not be valued for the thoughts we express. And where Peter Elbow flips this on its head is he articulates that the writer lives inside. The writer is actually the voice of a human being, whether you can spell, whether you can read, whether you have two hands or no hands, whether you rely on voice-to-text software. Writing is not related to the act of transcription. Transcription is simply how you note the words that come out of your mouth. And we know this because if you look, for instance, at languages that use characters like Chinese or pictographs to represent words, that's very different than a phonetic system like in the Roman alphabet of English. And so if we recognize that the transcription can vary, but communication stays constant, we know then that writing actually comes from a different place inside of us. Not about accuracy of transcription, like using commas or spelling correctly. Those are merely tools to capture the writing voice, the writing insight, the writing thoughts of a human being. So one of the things that I love is that Peter says this. Let me start with this passage here. When reading always comes first, It lulls people into thinking that literacy is all about mastering the code and conventions of edited, written English. Literacy actually means letters, and the generative core is the ability to get your thoughts into letters or visible language. The power-giving core of literacy then involves agency and activity rather than passivity. Let me read that last sentence again because it's really key to everything Brave Writer does. The power-giving core of literacy involves agency and activity rather than passivity. What does Dr. Peter Elbow mean by that? He is acknowledging that self-expression is much bigger than passively conveying ideas through the hand. And if you notice, like right now, I'm using intonation patterns, I'm using hand gestures, I'm raising my eyebrows, I'm moving my body. I can hardly sit still. I always think about these news anchors who deliver the news without even moving their heads. So not me, right? I'm moving the whole time because part of my communication comes through the activity of the body, of the full organ of my body, my mouth, how I sound in my own ears. And if that's true for me at 59 years old, how much more true is it of your child who is 6, 8, 12, 15, where their energy level is commensurate with what they are accomplishing through their communication? You know, you have kids bounding down the stairs. You have kids shouting at the top of their lungs. You have them slamming doors as a punctuation mark for something that they're communicating, correct? So when we think of writing then, I always am thinking, what's the activity? What's the activity that's going to cause this child to wed themselves to the comma, to the syncopation of the synonyms and the syllables, to the onomatopoeia? I'm asking that question. How is this child going to embody the constituent features of quality writing? Another thing that Peter Elbow said that I want to share with you at the top of this webinar, and then we will get right into the products so you can see how we do these things inside of our program. He makes this recommendation that when students write, they write without caring about punctuation, grammar, and spelling initially. They rely on their natural speaking voices. They orate to the page. That's his concept. And we're big fans. We use free writing in every one of our classes. We have a free writing prompt on Instagram every single Friday and on the blog. We love to give kids full access to what they want to say before they worry about how it should be punctuated or how they should say it, right? So here's one of his tactics that he recommends to students when they are growing in their writing skill set. Read over your fast, careless, textual speaking onto the page, even if it's produced by voice transcribing software, and look for what he calls linguistic virtues. Linguistic virtues. What's a linguistic virtue? A virtue is something that has value, that has merit, that sings, that feels elevated and powerful and connecty, okay? There's no need for technical terms like alliteration or assonance or even, you know, using these really weird grammatical terms like nominalizations, right? We're not looking for technical terms. He suggests just looking for passages that feel strong, lively, and clear. Strong, lively, and clear. When Brave Writer selects passages that we use to teach the mechanics and craft of writing, that is our rubric. We're looking for strong, lively, clear writing. And then we dissect it. We do the work for you by looking at the passage and asking ourselves, what made it strong? How do we quantify, examine, understand the liveliness? Why is it so effective and clear? And as we explore that for ourselves, as we're building our products, we then write in very hopefully strong, lively, and clear language the notes that you need to bring that passage and that principle to life for your children. So I have our programs, and just to recap for those who are new, Brave Writer produces 4 levels of writing materials that go with literature. So we pick 10 books for you for the Dart, Arrow, or Boomerang, 5 books for the Slingshot, and you and your student will read those books aloud. For the Slingshot level, that student will read to themselves, but even the Boomerang level, early high school, if you can read them aloud or read them together, that's really wonderful. It's not a requirement, but it's wonderful. But for the Dart and Arrow levels, we hope you're reading them as a family, enjoying the language together. Your kids do not have to be so skilled at reading that they can read Charlotte's Web to themselves to benefit from the Dart. Okay, so this is from last year. And these products come out once a month on the first of the month. They are guides, what we call handbooks, and they include 4 passages that we select from that month's novel. And then what we do is we suggest using those passages for copy work, dictation. We have 2 other styles of dictation that I explained last time that you can see in the replay. And those practices help your kids become skillful in the mechanics of writing. But we go one step further. We don't only care about spelling. We don't only care about the semicolon. We don't only care about grammatical structure. We also care about strong, lively, and clear writing. We are hoping that by immersing your kids in these quality writers, they are internalizing those writing patterns and that voice, and it will get mixed together and be recreated into a writing voice that matches your child, that is a whole new magical voice that they will express over their lifetime that sounds like them, every bit as much as their actual speaking voice identifies them, right? Like you recognize the voices of your children. You can tell them apart by how they sound. Similarly, in writing, they are cultivating a voice, a means of self-expression that is unique to them, that sounds like them, that when you read the page, you're like, yep, that's Jacob. Or, oh my gosh, that is so the way Liam always expresses himself, like that. But how do we get there from here? What does that look like? Well, inside these programs, we have 4 weeks worth of information for you to digest and share with your kids 1 week at a time. We identify the literary elements for you, what we call literary elements or literary devices. We don't do it for every passage, but when a passage really stands out with one, we highlight it. So as you can see here, last year in Charlotte's Web, we pointed out onomatopoeia, which is a really hard to spell word, but a super fun one to say. Onomatopoeia, onomatopoeia. And I used to tell my kids, if you want to prove you're really smart inside of the writing craft, just memorize how to spell that word and throw it out anytime you want to impress people. So onomatopoeia, and let me read to you how we define it, the kind of language we use in our program to help you feel comfortable expressing these ideas to your kids. E.B. White expresses the songs that songbirds use from words in our English language. This practice is a form of onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is the literary device that features words that sound exactly like the noises they represent. What makes this particular passage so clever is that the onomatopoeic words are not nonsense terms like, rah, like that. They're actual terms that have alternate meanings as well. So they function as sound words in this context, but they also convey meanings intended by White to the reader. White even explains these meanings for the reader for the sheer pleasure of it. Double your pleasure, double your fun. So now are you excited? Let's hear the passage that has these sound words that both sound like the bird song, but also convey additional meanings. The song sparrow, who knows how brief and lovely life is, says, sweet, sweet, sweet interlude, sweet, sweet, sweet interlude. You can kind of hear the musicality of those words inside the mouth of a bird, can't you? Sweet, sweet, sweet interlude. Sweet, sweet, sweet interlude. That is gorgeous onomatopoeia, but it also conveys another idea. What idea is that? Sweet interludes. This sort of optimism, gentleness, peacefulness. And you know, when you're listening to birdsong, aren't you having a sweet interlude? Aren't you for a moment suspended from all your life's pressures and only tuned into birdsong? That's what E.B. White is conveying. That's what his literary craft is doing in that passage. So we slow down your reading for the plot, and we help you tune in to why this writing is magical, why it holds your attention, so that your child is filing this away in the file cabinet of his own or her own or their own imagination, so that they can call it up, dial it up when they want to create a similar effect. Does that make sense? That's what we mean by teaching writing craft. Let me give you another example. Here we talk about effective writing. And this comes from the week 4 passage, which if this passage doesn't make you cry, I need to buy you a heart. I cannot read it without getting emotional, because E.B. White connects to the reader so powerfully. So let me read you the passage, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how Brave Writer shares with you why this is considered effective writing. Okay? Wilbur never forgot Charlotte. Although he loved her children and grandchildren dearly, none of the new spiders ever quite took her place in his heart. She was in a class by herself. It is not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer. Charlotte was both. You guys, seriously, my eyes just welled and I just got chills up my spine. I have read this passage countless times. How do I know E.B. White is a good writer and a true friend? Because that passage never fails to move me. And yet the language is so simple. Why is it such effective writing? Why? Why? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you because I spent a lot of time thinking about it. E.B. White conveys emotion without being sentimental. He's not overtly tugging on your heartstrings. He gets to the heart of the matter. Charlotte, the spider, selected the apt word that changed the course of Wilbur's life. In a sense, Charlotte's writing in her web is the manifestation of everything E.B. White believes about writing: brief, clear, specific, accurate, powerful. What else would we want from writing? What else from friendship? The irony is, of course, that Charlotte's writing is so well edited. She uses single words to change lives, to alter the course of local history in that family in town. Her writing is that effective. Of further note, Charlotte finds one of her words on an advertisement for soap bubbles, radiant. This is the big one, the term that spares Wilbur's life for good. She solicits new words by asking Templeton the rat to bring her snatches of print in chapter 12. A long-time suggested practice in Brave Writer is that instead of hunting for new language or terms in a thesaurus when revising a draft, it's a good idea to page through magazines or websites. Advertisements help words stand out due to their font sizes and colors, as well as the visual context in which they reside. These presentation tools aid a writer's imagination. There's nothing wrong with hunting for words and using the ones we find. Lastly, White makes it clear that what he thinks about the power of the written word is expressed here. I think terrific might impress Zuckerman, but Charlotte, said Wilbur, I'm not terrific. That doesn't make a particle of difference, replied Charlotte, not a particle. People believe almost anything they see in print. Does anybody here know how to spell terrific? In other words, you get a little lesson, a little digested understanding that comes from our deep dive into the story, and we reveal it to you. We share it with you in user-friendly language so that you can have these kinds of conversations with your kids. Because writing and reading are connected. And reading comprehension is not just about remembering the right word that Charlotte picked in chapter 12. It's understanding why that was the right word and what the author was hoping to convey to the writers and the readers and anybody adjacent to him. He is literally saying that the apt word can save lives. And the apt word doesn't even have to come from inside of you. We can hunt and peck and collaborate and create a better world through how well we curate language and transform understanding. I mean, okay, it makes me want to reread Charlotte's Web, to be honest. I am so moved. No wonder E.B. White is the author of The Elements of Style. The man gets it. Another thing that we do inside the dart and the arrow is we pick a literary device of the month. Can you see that? And we do that each month so that you can highlight or feature assonance, alliteration, rhyme, powerful verbs, the role of dialogue, right? So that you have the staying power to be able to support these writing skills as your kids are growing them. So in the Charlotte's Web one, we talked about the literary device called alliteration, the repetition of the initial consonant sound. This is the letter C. As Wilbur came out of the crate, the crowd clapped and cheered. Mr. Zuckerman took off his cap and bowed. You can hear clapped, Zuckerman, crate, crowd, cap, took. There is alliteration and there is consonance happening throughout this passage. So we give you a passage as an example, and then we will pair a writing activity with that device. So in this case, we have your kids brainstorm a bunch of words for different letters, and then they're going to write their own tongue twisters that go with those letters to experience alliteration. So that's how we start to incorporate literary craft and writing devices into the lessons your children learn inside the dart, the arrow, and the boomerang. Let's take a look for a minute at the arrow. Another example of how, so the dart is for 8 to 10-year-olds, by the way. The arrow is for 11 and 12-year-olds. So we move up the ladder from things like alliteration or consonants or rhyme schemes to things that are a little more sophisticated for that next level. So here's an example from The Wild Robot Escapes, where we talk about tension and suspense in the passage, tension and suspense, because the passage that we share is loaded with it, and we want to name it and then explain it a little bit. Ripe with tension, this scene pushes readers headfirst into action. An attack is described. For a moment, the perpetrator's identity is unclear. We are told only that 7 beastly shapes have entered Annabelle's pasture. Feel a sense of dread grow as we sense Annabelle's vulnerability and wonder if she'll be okay. So we've got the passage up here for you to read, and then we give you some detailed description of why we think it works, and we name the craft, the writing craft, the literary device that the author uses to achieve that effect. For the arrow, we pick often a more sophisticated literary device to feature for the whole month. And in The Wild Robot Escapes, we focused on what we call breaking the fourth wall, breaking the fourth wall. That means, well, let me just read you how we've written it. The fourth wall is a term borrowed from theater, on stage or in movies or television. The fourth wall refers to an imagined wall that separates the actors from their audience. For the people watching the performance, the wall is transparent. The actors, on the other hand, cannot see the audience. Sometimes that fourth wall is broken. Actors will acknowledge their audience and even interact with them. The film Moana relies on this device more than once. Most famously, Tamatoa the crab asks his audience to look up the meaning of the word decapod, right? So you can share that with your kids who've likely seen the film, and they will now have a visceral reaction when you say breaking the fourth wall because they've experienced it. You can start looking out for it on all those Disney TV shows or whatever you watch with your kids. While narrators in books are not actors on stage, they usually tell a story without addressing the reader directly. In chapter 10 of The Wild Robot Escapes, however, the fourth wall comes tumbling down when the narrator speaks openly to the reader. Reader, I don't want to bore you with every detail of our robot's farm routine. Many of her tasks were incredibly dull. Others were unpleasant. And suddenly the writer rushes onto the stage, right, with the narrator. So that's this literary device. And that's an example of how we write our materials to invite you into the experience and to make it really tangible and understandable for your kids. In addition to a literary device of the month, we also offer you what we call at the dart and arrow level, big juicy questions. At the Boomerang and Slingshot level, we call them think piece questions. We'll talk about that for a minute. The big juicy questions are designed to engage your children in thoughtful reflection about the novel you're reading aloud. They are not designed for testing. So we don't test our kids with these questions. We ask them to jump into the pool and swim around, looking at all the nooks and crannies and investigating their thoughts related to these questions that create prompts. Some of them you can have free writing responses to. Some of them can just be conversational. At the dart and the arrow level, oral conversation, much better than written. At the Boomerang and Slingshot levels, have some of them be writing prompts. Use them for free writes. Help them get comfortable writing in response to a prompt under time pressure. They are going to use that skill in college. Don't have them do it for all 9 though. We give you 9 questions. My recommendation is always that you do anywhere from 3 to 5 of them, right? Let your kids choose not to answer some questions. That is a skill of discrimination. I want to think about this. I don't want to think about this. I'm more versed in being able to analyze this. This interests me less. The more your kids learn how to do that, the better writers they'll be, because they will start honing in on what makes them skillful writers. For instance, I was not as good at writing about detailed, factual, historical events, even though I was a history major. I always ended up focusing on themes, relationships, comparing the present to the past. I was looking in a more global way, so I tend to respond better to questions that organize themselves that way. It's a great skill for kids to develop. So here are some big juicy questions that are from The Wild Robot Escapes, just to give you an example. The first one says, when Mr. Sharif shouts, "Come here, Rambler," we realize he's talking to his pickup truck. As the truck pulls up, it opens its doors, the people enter, and the truck proceeds to drive itself. Why do you suppose the author includes this image? How do self-driving automobiles help set the scene for Roz and the other robots that appear in this story? You know, as I'm reading this, I'm realizing this is a period piece, right? A time capsule, because we will have self-driving vehicles in the very near future. And right now, this feels futuristic. So there will be a time when this story is read, they'll look back and think, well, that isn't futuristic. We're already here. We're living in it. Do you see how things happen like that? Here's one more question. Roz begins to grow comfortable on the farm and she befriends the animals and children. Still, she tells her friends that she must escape. Why does Roz believe that she has no choice but to leave? Do you agree with her decision? Why or why not? This is the kind of thinking we're provoking, open-ended, allowing your child to sort through their complex feelings and thoughts, asking their opinions and not asking for right answers. So the think piece, big juicy questions that we offer you in these go to literary craft, don't they? These are intentional choices a writer is making, and we are asking our students to reflect on, did they work? Did they work for you? Do you like them? Do they make sense? All right, let's move on now to the Boomerang. The boomerang and the slingshot. Here's what the slingshot looks like. This is for your senior high school students in junior and senior of high school. A Tale of Two Cities is our first book. And inside the slingshot, you are going to find similar features that I'm going to talk about from the boomerang. Historical context. That is something that is a literary device used by so many writers. And it's particularly valuable when you're reading a book that comes from a completely different century, like A Tale of Two Cities. So we unfold that for you. We give you some understanding. With the chiming of tiny ornamental bells, the crowd clears, uncovering one man from their midst. Dressed to the nines, he blends in with the crowd, but also stands apart. What does this man tell us about the society in which he moves? What power does this man hold? What also makes this passage special is that Dickens put so much description into the middle of the sentence. It's easy to see the Marquis's exaggerated movements as they fill the pause. So we unveil to you things to think about when you're reading the passage so that it doesn't just sit in your brain as one lump of language. So let's look at some of the examples from the boomerang. The boomerang is for your 13 and 14-year-olds, freshman and sophomore in high school. And so these literary devices, they get a little more challenging, right? We went from alliteration to suspense. Now look at this level, foreshadowing. Foreshadowing. Now, to be honest, my kids grew up in a family that had a lot of literary analysis going on, and their dad was a composition and literature professor with an MA in literature. And so he taught them foreshadowing with The Little Mermaid. So one of the fun skills that my kids really loved was being able to guess the foreshadowing moments inside Disney movies. So even though I'm saying this is a more sophisticated skill, it does not have to be. But of course, we're doing Emma from last year of the boomerang and long passage. And we want to talk about some of the literary techniques that we found Jane Austen using, right? So foreshadowing is one of them. And I'm going to read you, I'm not going to read you the long passage because it's absurdly long. And by the way, you don't have to copy all of it. That is so that we can have these really rich discussions. Foreshadowing in this passage. Our heroine dwells in Regency, England, where, just as in a reality dating show, the one who marries for both wealth and love is a winner. Those in the running seek to rise to higher heights through marriage to someone lucky to possess a greater annual income than oneself. Failing that, at the very least, one must be sure to marry within one's own class and income bracket. With this end in mind, people of all ages eagerly scrutinized eligible adults for signs of romantic affection. Attachment to the right person was fanned into flame by maneuvering the interested parties to spend time together. Whereas an undesirable connection was ruthlessly cut off by any means possible. Emma is no exception, eagerly partaking in the national sport of matchmaking. Inflated with pride from her success, Emma embarks on a journey to exert her influence over future matches as well. And so then this whole week is going to go into how this passage contributes to the trajectory of the entire book. And we can start to see the foreshadowing of the various matches that Emma tries to make, naturally blind to the ones that will be for her. So we've got something inside the boomerang called the inside scoop. And these inside scoops help us understand a little bit more about the context of the writing. So in this case, absorbing stories from times past, don't be vexed by the verbose. And we talk about the vernacular, remember vernacular eloquence, the vernacular of these older works of fiction and how they are understood by us today. Okay, when you sit down to read, keep in mind that it takes several minutes for your brain to adjust to the foreign language. When you first start, you may subconsciously feel dissonance between your real life in a modern context and the story setting. Of course, we use the word foreign in quotation marks because most of us are native English speakers, but it feels like we're studying a language we don't know sometimes when we're doing these older books, right? So we give you some understanding of the vernacular of that time. Another way that we explore this book is we talk a little bit about what we see Jane Austen doing in her literary craft. And in this book, she uses the power of subconscious as a controlling force in the development of the story. And so, for instance, she says, the subconscious mind is not nearly so tame to our will. The subconscious mind is a primal force that propels our instincts for love or hate, fight or flight, and more. Our intuitions and daydreams are a reflection of the impressions we store deep inside. It's more like riding in a car being driven by someone else. All we can really do is watch the scenery as it rolls by. Emma's constant dialogue with herself, sometimes presented as an inner monologue without quotation marks, and sometimes presented as spoken words, which, though uttered aloud, are kept to herself, is as much a part of the narrative as her dialogues with the people of her home and village. The reader is privy not just to what happens and to what is said between the characters, but also to what Emma thinks of it all. So as we develop these products for you, what we're doing is we're illuminating other layers to save you time, to educate you if this is not your wheelhouse, or simply to enjoy the ride with you. You've made these observations. We're here pointing them out. You can share them with your kids. So the final part that I wanted to show you then, the beyond the passage portion of the Boomerang. This is where we are showing you something that goes beyond the passage we picked for the week, but is maybe still in the same chapter. So in this case, Miss Bates is one of the characters, and she acts as a catalyst for some of the action. So we've called it out, and we've gone beyond what we shared in the passage to show you how that plays out inside the book, inside the story at large. Also inside the Boomerang, we have what we call think piece questions. And these are very similar to the big juicy questions in the Dart and in the Arrow. And the reason we call them think piece questions is we invite your students to do a little free writing. So instead of only having an oral conversation with you, have them pick a couple in a month and let them allow their free writing to be a little guided by these ideas rather than just purely writing about whatever they want. This is also Peter Elbow language. A think piece is not well edited. It is the rough draft of your thinking while you are contemplating a specific question. So let me review everything for those of you who jumped in late or are brand new to Brave Writer, because we really do want to support and help you. Brave Writer thinks about writing in three main categories: original thought, the ideas in your head that you want to express; mechanics, the transcription skills you have to either type or handwrite those thoughts; and writing projects. Those are the outputs that you use the transcription skills and thoughts. So for instance, writing an essay, writing a letter, writing a think piece, writing a free write, writing a diary entry, writing a Facebook status update, writing an Instagram caption, writing anything that has a form, those are called, in Brave Writer's world, writing projects. And the way that we teach those together is we get you set up with 10 books or 5 books for the year that you're going to read with your kids. And we give you a Dart, an Arrow, a Boomerang, or a Slingshot, one of these 4 programs that guides you through reading that book and learning the mechanics of writing. We use The Writer's Jungle, which is our seminal manual, to teach you how to teach the original thought piece of writing, how to get your kids comfortable thinking thoughts, self-expressing, getting that onto the page. That's the original thought piece. And then the third part then are our writing projects. We have Jot It Down, Partnership Writing, a whole series of them, Faltering Ownership, Help for High School. And inside of these are writing projects like writing a letter, doing a written narration, writing a report, writing facts, making lists. All of those activities require mechanics and thoughts. So once you start to understand how to transcribe and how to self-express, you're ready to use our writing project programs. Those are all PDF files that you download and you purchase those in our store. The other half of Brave Writer are our online writing classes. And those classes focus on the original writing process and these writing projects that your kids will produce. So if you want guided instruction for 3 to 6 weeks by one of our trained writing coaches, taking an online writing class is phenomenally helpful. Some of our classes include you and enroll you with your child. Some of them don't, so read them carefully. But those only last 3 to 6 weeks. You've still got the majority of the year where you want to keep the good going in writing. And that's why we recommend the Dart, the Arrow, the Boomerang, and the Slingshot to sustain you every month with something brand new. It's like a magazine subscription. Each month, you get brand new curriculum that reinvigorates you for that month. And then if you want to work on writing projects, take a look at our bundles, the beginning writers bundle, the growing writers bundle, the middle school writers bundle, the high school writers bundle, or the college prep bundle. They all help you integrate all three of those writing pieces: original thought, mechanics, and writing projects. If you purchase Dart, Arrow, Boomerang, or the college prep bundle right now for $129, you get added to our membership community called the Brave Learner Home. And that's where we do training and support and walk you through all these products so that you don't feel high and dry when you download the PDF files. We're there. We've got recordings of me walking you through everything you need to do. So that's why June is special. That's why we're doing these webinars, so that you understand not only what we offer, but how we support it for the rest of the year. I hope that gives you enough to go on. The levels in our program then are sort of that 5 to 8, 8 to 10, like that. Like we break them into groups. If you've got multiple children, aim for the middle. Aim for the middle. Pick the child who is your middle child and purchase one of the bundles that is good for that child. And then we show you how to modify up and down for your other children. So if you had a 13, a 10, an 8, a 7, and a 4, get the Growing Writers bundle. That's the one that will encompass your entire family, like that. I hope that gives you some sense. I'm going to look at one more question, but I do have to hang up in a minute. Great question. A person is asking if the high school student can work independently. Here's my thinking about that. A high school student can do help for high school independently, and they can read the books in the Boomerang and Slingshot level alone. But I would like you to have conversations that are drawn from the Boomerang together. It's very lonely to simply read information, read information. If they were in school, they'd have a teacher engaging with them. So you might want to form a little book club for your teenagers, or meet once a week over a cafe latte and go through some of this with them, even if you don't read the book. You can always go to Spark Notes and get an overview, and then come and just have a really good conversation with your student. Oh, and the online writing classes focus on a slice like grammar, or writing the essay, or writing a fairy tale, or writing a middle school writing project. They just do one project. That's all they focus on. Brave Writer 101 teaches the content of the Writer's Jungle. It teaches the original thought life and how you can coach your child in writing. So if you're brand new to us, always start with Brave Writer 101. You will love it. It will change your life with your kids, and it will help them become fabulous writers. Okay, thank you for joining me today. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Have a great day.